I'm so excited I found this thing. I've been looking for this for 2 days. It was driving me crazy. It's a little cover to a handheld device I use for recording, and I'm shooting the video of a kid's performance for Aladdin in a couple days. And it's my backup sound device because the audio quality isn't always the greatest. And without this, the batteries can like flop out of the back, and I was worried that I wouldn't get good sound. And it's driving me nuts. It was a real problem on a couple different levels. But that's life, problem solving. They can be small, they can be medium, they can be large. And I'm so relieved to find this. It tells me I probably need to 5S my office a little bit. But let's talk about 10 quotes for problem solving today. These are 10 of my all-time favorites. I actually couldn't rank them. I got an order to them, but they're not in terms of magnitude or date or impact or things like that. They're just 10 personal favorites of mine. It kind of goes in a cycle. So please, down below, list the ones I forgot and the ones that you like, because this is a subjective and personal list. All right, jumping right in. Number 10, Uri Levine. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution. I love this one so much, I had to go out and make a shirt just so I could be like him. Uri invented the app Waze, and he talks at conferences and talks about innovation and a lot of different topics. Amazingly successful person, but I love his attitude more than anything. If you're going to be successful in life, you got to learn to love the problem, think at it from many different angles, not fear it, tackle it head on, be creative, be critical thinking, all those skills you need, but fall in love with the problem and not your solution. Solutions get old after a while. I don't have 8 tracks or cassettes or DVDs anymore. And look, the world's going to change around us. It's just a reminder to fall in love with the problem, think about the future, and don't love into the solution or process too much that you're doing right now. Number 9, Abraham Maslow. If your only tool is a hammer, then every problem's going to look like a nail. I run into this a lot. Companies, executives, coaches, sports, teachers, they often know one way of doing things. They fall in love with it. They're good at it. It's gotten them success, so of course they stick with it. But look, life is complex. One way doesn't always work. One size doesn't fit all. And sometimes you got to be flexible in your approach, your attitude, your style, and come up with a better way of doing things. Otherwise, every problem looks like a nail and your one tool is a hammer. And doesn't always work. Number 8, Anonymous. I actually thought this was Deming. I was positive it was because somebody told me it was, and I read it on the internet so many times I believed it. It's the phrase, "In God we trust, all others bring data." I mean, it sounds so good, it has to be true. It's got to be Deming, right? Turns out there's a little bit of a history behind it, and it may not be him. It could be. I believe the book was 1985. Mary Walton, hope I got the name correct, wrote this phrase in a book about him, but Deming allegedly didn't say it, and it wasn't attributed to him. It was in a book about Deming, and it kind of grew out of that. There are other people who said it earlier, but you don't know. It sounds so good that maybe Deming did say it sometime in the 50s or 60s, and then it got picked up by other people and then put into the book later. I don't know. I love the quote, "In God we trust. However, everybody else bring your data." Wouldn't politics be better if we could make that the Great Seal somehow? Maybe not. Maybe I'm just naive. Okay, number 7. A huge fan of this one. I can't believe I don't have it higher, but again, this is not a ranking. It's just a ordered list that comes around back in a full circle. Joseph M. Juran and Vilfredo Pareto. Okay, Pareto did it first. Juran coined the term, so we'll give them both credit for this. But it's the notion that in problem solving, you got to sort out the vital few from the trivial many if you want to be successful. And of course, the roots of that is the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, which you can discover in pea pods like Pareto did in his garden, or in land wealth and income distribution in Italy. You can find it in sales and profits. You can find it in quality. You can find that relationship in many, many, many walks of life. And if it's not the Pareto principle, you find the inverse of it, the power law. That's the first one I learned of it. It was actually the power law before I learned the Pareto principle. But they're very similar to mathematical concepts. Shape is different, but they're similar analogies and concepts. And if you're going to be successful in life, you figure this out intuitively one way or another. Focus on the vital few things that matter and not the trivial many. Number 6, Albert Einstein. Feels disrespectful to have any list with a number on it and have Albert Einstein number 6. But again, this is not an ordered ranking of importance or impact. It's just my subjective list on pre-Valentine's Day. So the reason I have it here is he has this quote about the importance of thinking about problems. and the importance of defining them well up front. And I 100% agree with this. His quote on the top goes, if I had an hour to think about a problem, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and then 5 minutes thinking about the solution. And that's really good. He's a reflective thinker. He's a theoretical physicist, obviously. He came up with many great insights and discoveries. But not all life is like that. You go to the hospital room in triage, ER, they got to take action. They can't spend the first, 91.67% of the time thinking about the problem. They got to act fast. Certain problems in life are like that. I wrestle Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If I laid on the mat and thought about my opponent for 4.5 minutes before I started my fight, they'd choke me out. Wouldn't be pretty. And of course, if it's a Kaizen event, think about this. 12 hours a day, 5 days in a row, 60 hours. Albert Einstein, Friday lunchtime, would still be thinking about the problem before he went on to the solution. And the rest of us would probably get frustrated with that. So I love the quote. I agree with it. But sometimes you can't do this every time in life. There has to be a bias towards action and learning and a bias towards measuring and getting results above and beyond just thinking. But I still love the quote and agree with him in spirit and concept 100%. Number 5, John Dewey. Not many people know of Mr. Dewey, but again, in the early part of the 20th century, very influential person in fields of law and philosophy and education, and just an impressive number of books he published. A lot of thoughts on problem solving that didn't catch on in industry, but were, again, captured and recorded in the Times. And he, as far as I know, as far as I can trace it back, he's the one who said, a problem well defined is a problem half solved. His actual phrase was, a problem well put is a problem half solved. But, that's pretty close. People after that changed it and ran with it and stated it more eloquently, I think. Charles Kettering, for example, of Delco fame, I think he said, a problem well defined is half solved, and other people more recently, of course, have said it as well. But Dewey was big on, the experience side of thing, and the definition side of the problem as a key to getting started. And I 100% agree with his thought process on this. And it's such a simple, easy to recite phrase. I love it. A problem well defined is a problem half solved. Number 4, Kaoru Ishikawa, the Japanese quality control guru and genius. Tokyo University, PhD and head of the department, and advisor to the Japan Union of Scientists and Engineers during their most influential period. How cool would it be to have your name on one of the 7 QC tools? The Ishikawa diagram, the Pareto principle. Well, most of us aren't going to achieve that in life, but that's okay. He had this great concept in problem solving, and his statement went something like this, depends upon how you translate it from Japanese to English, that in problem solving, 95% of the problems you face can be solved by the 7 QC tools. And he had this great analogy about the warrior monk Benkei, which doesn't make sense in the Western world because nobody knows who Benkei is and how he won all his battles with his 7 tools and various fighting styles. But it's a great analogy for Japanese. And I love the fact that he articulates you can solve a lot of problem with basic tools, 95%. The thing that bugged me, and I bought books of his in Japanese and read them for years, is like 95%. There's a reason for that, right? It's 2 standard deviations. He must have done a study of 1,000 problems and found out that exactly 2 standard deviations of the problems that he studied could be solved by these 7 QC tools and plotted it on a graph or something. And I never found it. So it looks like it's just an internet statistic and something he threw out as an opinion. But, I love the concept. Basic tools can be immensely useful in problem solving. Number 3, W. Edwards Deming. I had to put Deming in front of Ishikawa. I could dick or go both ways on that, but Deming went to Japan and not vice versa, so I got to put Deming in front of him there. But a very similar comment. 85% of the reasons for failure are deficiencies in the system rather than the employees. The role of management is to change the process rather than badgering employees to do better. He was really way out ahead of the game in thinking about this. Stewart and Deming and many others. That if you don't control the process and the variables and the inputs, you're not going anywhere. He had his favorite red bead experiment, different ways of showing this. And later on, I ran across another quote in his life that said 94% of the problems in business are system-driven and only 6% are people-driven. And I wondered the same thing, with Ishikawa's. So where'd you get the data, right? In God we trust. All others bring their data. But I could never find it. So I was always a little disappointed at my heroes here. But I'm sure they're right. I know they're right. I believe. Number 2, Taiichi Ohno. And yeah, I had to put him here in the top 2 or 3 because I worked for Toyota. I worked in Mr. Ohno's plant, engine plant Kamigo, which was the mother plant for the engine plants and a model for the Toyota production system in the 1960s. So even though I worked there 10 years after he left, I feel the connection, and I couldn't disrespect him by not having him in the top couple here. Having no problem is the biggest problem of all. And I agree with that 100%. If you come to work and you don't know what the problem is, it means a couple of different things. Number one, you lack awareness, and that's not good if you're unaware of the problems around you in your environment. Number two, on a purpose level, it makes it very hard to lead. If you can't define what the problems are, figure out what the main ones are, and lead people towards resolving them, I think you're going to struggle as a leader. And number three, the great thing about problems, again, is it sets the opportunity for improvement. Not only solving gap from standard problems, what I call, type 2, but you can raise the bar. Even when you don't technically have a problem, you can raise the bar and improve and make things better. And that always gives me hope and inspiration that we have that ability in each and every one of us to improve. So I love this one in that sense. And the Toyota man in me has to put him here near the top. Number 1, and this may surprise you. It's not a quality control figure. It's not somebody from Japan. It's somebody you may not run across in normal books on problem solving. But I had to throw up Rick Warren on this list because he has a phrase, again, that resonates personally with me. It's not in top 10 in terms of impact or fame or stature of things like this, but applies to everybody around the world and not just those of us in the improvement community of Lean, Six Sigma, or whatever flavor of things you're working on. Life is a series of problem-solving opportunities. The problems you face will either defeat you or develop you depending upon how you respond to them. And for me, that's life. It's like the yin and yang symbol there. In good there's bad, and bad there's good. In light there's dark, and dark there's light. In problems there's opportunity, and opportunity there's always problems. And life is on that edge, finding the balance, the right attitude, the right balance, the right stability, the right way to go forward and make things better. So I love this quote, and it's my personal favorite, at least today, February 13, 2020. It'll change next week, but I'd love to hear what yours are. I know I left out a bunch of really good ones, so please put them down below and let me know why you love it. Thank you.